everyone, welcome to or welcome back to my channel. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Lena and I make college and book related content here on YouTube, and this semester study abroad content, and today will be my November wrap up. I was supposed to film this video last week, but it was kind of a mess, so I'm filming it this week, so a little bit of a delay from my November wrap-up, but it is coming to you all the same. The best news of all is that I actually read more than one book this month, so that was great. I actually almost read 3 whole books, but I didn't quite make it that far. So without further ado, let's get into the video. The first book that I read in the month of November was These Violent Delights by Chloe Gong. I read this in an ebook format, which made it much harder for me to read and took much longer for me to read. So I did read about half of it in the month of October and then finally finished it in the month of November. But this book is a retelling of Romeo and Juliet, the classic Shakespeare tragedy, and it takes place in 1920s Shanghai, and it follows the story of 2 different gangs, the Scarlets and the White Flowers. Juliet Kai belongs to the Scarlet Gang, and she has been living in the West being educated, but she has since returned back to her family and her origins because she is the heiress to the Scarlet Gang. And then there's the White Flowers with Roma Montagov, who is their gang is actually Russian, and so they have an enormous blood feud that has been going on for a long time, and so these 2 gangs are rivaling over power in the streets of Shanghai. However, that's not the biggest issue between these 2 gangs. There is a monster on the loose in Shanghai that is murdering and destroying the city population. It spreads this madness that causes people to tear out their own throats and take their own lives, and no one really knows where the monster is or who it's coming from, and so Juliet and Roma must band together and try to get to the bottom of this horror. I gave this book 3 out of 5 stars. I definitely had really mixed feelings about this book. In the beginning, I was really obsessed, but then there were a lot of parts in the book that I really just did not appreciate and did not like. But first we'll talk about the things that I really enjoyed. The first being the setting and the concept of the retelling. I thought it was really imaginative. I thought it was interesting, new, fresh, and really immersive to read. The setting in Shanghai was really well done. It felt really authentic, and I definitely didn't feel like it was some spewed up version of Italy, and they just picked a random city to put it in. So I definitely think Chloe Gong did a great job with that. The idea that I really loved was the 2 gangs and their rival. The tension between the gangs was perfect. It was on point. Chloe Gong did a fabulous job with that. It really brought what I wanted and what I expected, and I thought honestly like that's the whole reason to read this book, was just the tension. I also think that the author brought up some really important themes about culture, identity, westernization, colonization, really important and relevant, especially when you consider that Shakespeare and Romeo and Juliet as part of the Western world, but then bringing it over to Shanghai and kind of exploring the ways that colonization has had deep and hurtful impacts upon various countries and cities around the world. Things that I didn't like about this book was mainly the romance between Roma and Juliet. Most of their romance has, like the bulk of their romance, or the stereotypical first meeting part, which is what takes place in the actual Romeo and Juliet, has taken place before this book even begins. And so the reader is just assumed to buy into their romance, and I did not buy into it, and I didn't buy into it once throughout the whole book, and I really felt like I was missing something, so that was really frustrating, especially considering that that's supposed to be a huge part of this book, is their romance and their relationship, and the idea that they can't be together. I also found it a little bit too on the nose with some of the themes. I really appreciated some of the discussions and ideas, but at the same time it was a little too obvious at some points, and I didn't love that because I really just want the reader to work more. That's what I enjoy doing when I'm reading, is working more, thinking, and coming to some conclusions by myself with the little breadcrumbs the author leaves. But there were times that there were no breadcrumbs. It was just, this is what it is. But I still appreciated the author's attempt at discussing these important issues. And then the final thing was, as I mentioned, the White Flower Gang is a Russian gang, but there really wasn't much about the Russian culture or Russian aspect of it all. And as someone who's addicted and obsessed with Russian literature, I really, really, really wanted that. So other than their last names and a few mentions here and there, we really did not get the whole Russian identity, which I thought would have been really powerful considering Russia identity within Shanghai, interacting with the world, especially because Russia is considered both like an Eastern country and a Western country. So I think that would have been really fascinating, but didn't exist. Maybe that's just my own personal issue, but yeah. So I gave that book 3 out of 5 stars. Definitely worth a read, but I probably won't be continuing the series. Next book. The next book I read in the month of November was A Room of One's Own by Virginia Woolf. This book is basically a long or extended essay that Virginia Woolf wrote in the 20s based upon a series of lectures that she gave addressing women's role in writing fiction, in being authors. This is a book that's considered an integral part of feminist texts, and it is also really important to the world of literature as well because it's Virginia Woolf. And I actually got this book from Shakespeare and Company. I don't know if you can see that. It was one of the 2 books that I ended up getting. My mom bought it for me very kindly, and I really, really love this edition. I've been wanting to read more Virginia Woolf for a while. I read To the Lighthouse in high school, and I've been wanting to pick up another book of hers. And I was looking between Mrs. Dalloway and this one, and I just liked this edition much better, so I got this book. I gave this book 4 out of 5 stars, or this essay 4 out of 5 stars. As I said, love the edition, so props to them. Obviously that didn't impact my review, but like, I do love the edition. I thought that this book offered a really amazing and important perspective into what it meant to be a woman during this time, during this period, and also what it meant to be Virginia Woolf. I've only read her fiction, so I don't have a huge grasp on her or her biography other than some random works that I've read here and there. But I think that sometimes I lose sight of how privileged my life is now as a woman living in the 21st century. I know that life has not always been this easy or this privileged, but I sometimes lose track of that, and this book offered a great perspective into how far we've come as women and also all of the women that we are standing upon. I loved the mix between narrative and essay and her thoughts and then more like scholarly writing. I just found it really well done, well written. It was compelling, and I really could not put it down. I read it so quickly. Also, as someone who loves to sometimes be a little too harsh, I really love the zingers directed at men. They cracked me up. There were times that I was like, I need this framed and on my wall, and I really appreciated those. The reason why I didn't give it 5 out of 5 stars is because there were times throughout this essay that it was a little bit too white feminist, and I understand that's obviously because of the time period and also just kind of Virginia Woolf as a writer and as a person. But there were some lines and some passages that were a little more difficult to read because they were so white feminist and kind of oblivious to other struggles of individuals. And that's a problem with the feminist movement, is that oftentimes it is very white dominated and white centric. So that is definitely something that was a little tricky to read at times, in the sense of I did not feel right necessarily praising this entire essay as like the most iconic piece of feminist literature, but it's definitely important and necessary to read, and gaining a full perspective of feminist texts and things like that, and also just critically thinking about them. But yes, definitely recommend this and can't wait to pick up more Virginia Woolf. And then the last book I read in the month of November, I didn't end up finishing, but I got so close to being done. It is Anton Chekhov's 5 plays. I've read 4 of the 5 plays, and I'm just about to start the 5th. So the 4 plays that I read were Ivanov, The Seagull, Uncle Vanya, and 3 Sisters. And the last play that I have to read is The Cherry Orchard. This book I also picked up from Shakespeare and Company. It was the second and final book that my mother got for me, so again, thank you, Mom. And this is translated by Marina Brodskaya, with an introduction by Tobias Wolff. As I've mentioned already in this video, and I feel like I mention it in almost every book video, I'm obsessed with Russian literature. I read a lot of it. It's my goal to read at least one integral or classical piece of Russian literature every single semester, so this was definitely my semester's reading. I didn't know if I'd be able to pull it off considering I am in France and doing a lot of French-based reading and writing, but I was able to read it, or at least get through most of it, and I'll be finishing the final play at some point this week or next week. I hadn't read Chekhov to this point, to be honest. I had done a monologue for him in high school for one of my plays from Three Sisters, but I'd never read a piece in its entirety, and he's one of the most widely translated and performed non-English speaking, writing playwrights on English stages. So that's really, really fascinating, and I can definitely see why. His writing and his work as a playwright was so brilliant and innovative. I have been obsessed with this, to say the least, and really, really enjoying it. I think his characters are so well done and developed. There is so much interesting decisions about what's on stage and what's off stage. The dialogue, it's really, really well done. I think the descriptions of the sets are also interesting. I don't read a lot of plays in my free time or as my leisure reading, but I have been pulled into this, and I don't have a favorite one yet. I can't give you the final say, but I will say that I have been really obsessed with this, and I can't wait to finish it. Are we surprised? And to get a final update will probably be in my December wrap-up, so stick around for that. That being said, that is all for today's video. Thank you so much for watching. If you have any questions, book recommendations, video recommendations, leave them down in the comments below. I'm in my last couple of weeks here in France, so in the next couple of weeks will be some more study abroad, traveling vlogs, and then I will head home for the holidays, and I will see you all next week. The biggest thing that I loved was the idea of the two rival gangs. Why is there a fly in my room?